Mr. Eric Falt, he's from France. He's the Director and UNESCO Representative for the UNESCO New Delhi office, covering Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, and Maldives and Sri Lanka. From 2010 to 2018, he was based at UNESCO Headquarters in Paris as the Assistant Director General for External Relations and Public Information with the rank of Assistant Secretary General in the UN. Mr. Falt served from 2007 to 2010 as Director in the United Nations Department of Public Information in New York. Prior to that position, he was Director of the Communications for the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, based at its global headquarters in Nairobi. Throughout the 1990s and until 2002, he served in UN peacekeeping and humanitarian operations in Cambodia, Haiti, and Iraq, and as well as in Pakistan. Thank you.
Shama, for this introduction. Esteemed panelists, dear book and reading enthusiasts, namaste. And I really want to thank you, Dr. Shama, for bringing us together on this auspicious and important occasion today, where we celebrate together, among many other things, the joy of reading. We meet today in lieu of 23 April, which is celebrated globally as World Book and Copyright Day. So we're meeting a couple of days later, but on this day the idea is that we come together to celebrate the importance and enjoyment of reading books. The occasion recognizes the scope of books as a medium that contributes to the strong existing bonds between communities and cultures, between the past and the future. As you may know, the importance of this date can be traced back to its significance in literature, because it marks the death anniversary of some of the most prominent authors, like William Shakespeare or Miguel de Cervantes. This date was also chosen at UNESCO's General Conference in Paris back in 1995 as a worldwide tribute to books and authors, encouraging everyone to access books. Dear friends, I'm sure we'll all agree that books have been an integral part of human conscience for ages. They have played a central role in social and independence movements, including here, of course, in India, and have stimulated minds over centuries. The global health pandemic has further exacerbated the demand for books as an outlet for knowledge generation and creation. I'm sure everyone will mention the changes that have occurred as part of the pandemic. I think it's also helped. Books have also helped to combat isolation during this very difficult and painful 2-year period. We have seen how this period of uncertainty has actually brought people closer to books, a medium which has not only helped them battle anxiety caused by the COVID crisis, but also to escape the painful surrounding reality. And that's why, for these reasons, UNESCO more than ever is resolutely committed to promoting access to books and reading, for example, through our World Book Capital program. You may know, I think I saw a sign when I entered the room that in 2022, the Mexican city of Guadalajara is taking up the mantle of World Book Capital with a year-long program that focuses on the role of books and reading in triggering social change, combating violence, and also building a culture of peace. One of my dreams would be really that we can have an Indian city as the World Book Capital. If you're interested in having New Delhi, of course, we can talk about it. It's not such a long and complicated process, unlike some other UNESCO processes. I mean, if you talk about acquiring a status of a World Heritage Site, it can take up to 10 years if you're lucky. World Book Capital is only a 1 or 2 year affair. So if you're interested, talk to me. Anyway, I think, again, we need to remember that the massive disruption caused by the pandemic in the global education system. Now, that's also why I want to mention it here today. has affected so many people. 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries, basically every country around the world. There's only just a few very isolated countries around the world that have not been affected by COVID. And it has impacted, as we all know, literacy. Literacy, to quote from former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, literacy is a bridge from misery to hope. It is a tool for daily life in modern society. It is a bulwark against poverty and a building block of development. These are beautiful words, and that's why I wanted to quote them, because they help us to highlight the role of books, the powerhouse of knowledge, in providing quality education, which is, of course, highlighted. You mentioned the Sustainable Development Goal, highlighted more specifically in SDG 4. I'm sure we all agree, all of you who are here today agree that books are a very powerful tool. I imagine that's why you came, and that they have the ability to inculcate critical thinking and influence generations. The question is probably, how do we harness the full potential of books? Well, that's where the role of UNESCO probably comes into being, and many other organizations, but I represent UNESCO, so I really want to mention that for us at UNESCO, we believe that we can harness the potential of books by ensuring equitable reading, access to books, learning opportunities to all, making sure that no one is left behind, and that every person, young or adult, has access to information and therefore to knowledge. And in saying so, of course, I have to emphasize that at this point in time, and well, in a way, thanks to COVID, we must embrace technological solutions to guarantee sustainable learning. That's why I'm keenly waiting to hear some of our experts today who are specialists in this area. You may know that the Global Education Coalition, convened by UNESCO, saw the emergence of innovative solutions in support of education continuity that was disrupted by the pandemic. We've seen a lot of traditional methods, but also some new ones, from radio and television, which was used for education, to distance e-learning solutions, to digital libraries. We have seen definitely how during the pandemic technology can in fact be our ally and an essential tool in learning. We see today that traditional patterns of reading are slowly evolving. As the pandemic hindered the opportunities for in-person learning, the source of education and knowledge has shifted a lot to, in particular, what I would call online channels. We haven't been together in a long time. I'm sure it's one of the very first events that you are holding in person, like all of us, and that's because we have all learned to learn differently. Students, in particular, have been more dependent on e-books, and academia in general is increasingly moving towards online journals for education and research. And there again, we have specialists in research who will, I'm sure, tell us how this has changed. But the provision of digital libraries, no matter what, has been very helpful. It has aided educators and knowledge seekers all over the world to access reading materials anytime, anywhere, in a way also helping us to overcome the barriers like gender inequality and poverty. In their manifesto that we have developed at UNESCO together with the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, IFLA, we have highlighted the importance of digital libraries with respect to giving access to information resources, linking information technology to education and culture in library services today. And I'm sure it's one of the guiding principles for your library here too. But the role of e-libraries extends beyond providing access to content. As recommended by the UNESCO IFLA manifesto, e-libraries could also become a good source of information on issues like intellectual property rights, support of the preservation of cultural heritage, along with providing, of course, access to content. And there are many good instances in the Indian context. You certainly stand here as a beacon for other libraries throughout India, and there's a strong network. I would like to mention, for instance, the library at the Indian Institute of Technology in Kharagpur, National Digital Library of India, which provides Indian learners with a vast collection. I think that there's around 48 million resources, and that this particular library has 3 million users across disciplines. So what is good, and I think I would like to encourage you in this regard, is to know what other libraries are pioneers in the network and work with them to inspire others. And of course, in working together, it is really for us at UNESCO and at the UN in general of utmost importance to also accommodate the demands of all disadvantaged groups, such as persons with disabilities, when it comes to the designing of the libraries and the access also that you provide. India's Sugamaya Pustakalaya provides such an example of a library that has resources for the visually impaired in the form of access to e-books. And yes, again, I want to stress and congratulate the Delhi Public Library, one of the oldest public libraries in India, which has made a lot of strides towards digitalization. The government of India definitely has put a lot of emphasis on the important role of digital libraries in preservation and access of heritage knowledge. I know it has inspired a lot of other countries. Our partners at the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, which is a part of the Ministry of Culture, have been revitalizing themselves a digital repository of valuable ancient manuscripts from every corner of the country in a big step towards preserving India's culture and heritage. That's also one of the very important aspects that I wanted to mention. And in doing so, and since we work with IGNCA so closely, I want to mention also the importance of the indigenous or tribal knowledge resources in their own dialects. I think it's important to provide more accessible resources using information technology tools to aid the preservation of indigenous languages. I know it's an important aspect. It's also mentioned in the International Decade for Indigenous Languages. We're just starting, 2022 is starting the International Decade for Indigenous Languages, and we're working very closely with the government on a number of initiatives. I don't want to be too long, but I need to say also at this point that today, on this occasion, we're also paying homage to all of the professions that are associated with books. And there are many: editing, translation, publishing, and book selling, of course, is important too. These fields, all of these fields, make it possible to disseminate India's literary heritage and beyond, to allow for the expression of new ideas and to enable the spread of stories, because that's what we all want when we read a book. We want to read a story. Sometimes we want to read a story with more academic content, but still, that's what I'm sure gets many of you going when you pick up a book. And all of these professions that I've just mentioned must be protected and their value acknowledged. Everybody has a contribution to make as we celebrate World Book and Copyright Day. We have looked at the importance of books and learning over the regions and periods in history, and at UNESCO this is a constant, and it can very well become concluded therefore that books and literature form the basis of human knowledge. Even though its form evolves and adapts with advancements in technology, the medium becomes more and more accessible to the largest numbers. That's what is important. And from high-cost printed journals available to just a minor section of society in the 19th century, nobody obviously can remember here, but you can just imagine that it was the case, to the digital libraries now, we can imagine the quantum leap in access to information that has happened. That is amazing. And the medium of knowledge creation has evolved remarkably. It is a cause for celebration, and as access becomes more and more able to penetrate in society, it can only be hoped that this knowledge also becomes accessible for all. So I will conclude here, and I would really like to thank you again for inviting me, and to thank everyone for their time. I hope that my few words today will encourage and promote a culture of reading and learning in some small way. Thank you very much, and happy reading.